Also gives, if you think about it, those people who are the trustees, they have to have some sort of they have to have a benefit themselves, right? Which is why there are people who are paid to manage trusts. Now, can you be a beneficiary and a trustee? Yes. In that scenario, you would want to make sure that the trust keeps on going because you are benefiting from it and you're also in control. And who's going to keep you honest? The other beneficiaries who are not trustees, because they will sue you if you mess up, because now you're messing with their money, right? So another big reason, again, going back to escaping probate, is you want to avoid estate tax. It's somewhere around $12 million mark, which means that you have a lifetime gift. You can give away up to roughly $12 million over your lifetime without paying an estate tax, right? And when you hit that number, everything above that, you're now paying an estate tax, which I believe is 40%. Don't quote me on that. It's extremely high. It's 40%? Okay, 40%. So if you want to avoid that, that's why people create a lot of irrevocable and revocable trusts, stash their money, but still have control over it, still have the benefit of it, but they no longer own it because it moved from out of their estate into the trust. The trust is a whole separate thing that has an EIN number, files its own taxes. It is no longer yours. Your house, your car, your money, whatever it is that you took out of your estate and put into that trust is no longer yours to give away through, once you pass away or via a will, correct? So now you are a beneficiary of this trust that you have created. You are now poor on your own balance sheet. You're now a pauper on paper, but you still have access to your cash because you've set up appropriate trusts, maybe even a foundation too, if you're really shy, right? So you want to reduce or eliminate the state tax, and then of course privacy, which we talked about that a bit. If I were to go down the rabbit hole on let's just say I have an LLC and it's owned by a trust. When I go to the SOS website and I pull up that LLC and I see the John Doe Trust, where do I go for information? Where do I go to see who or what is behind that John Doe Trust? There's there's nothing. There's no way for you to figure out what's what. But now someone wants to sue John Doe Trust. They go to court, they say, hey, I'm suing John Doe Trust. What is that going to work? The answer is no. Why? Because in Texas, you cannot sue a trust. You have to sue the trustee of the trust. But how would you know who the trustee is if that's part of a private document that's not filed anywhere? So these are the types of things, the type of privacy that folks do in order to make sure to have layers so they don't know who to go after. They don't know what entity, they don't know who the trustee is. There's just multiple things, hurdles that they have to come across. Now, don't get me wrong, there's always a way. I know the way, right? If I see a trust, I can get at it. But it's a lot harder, time intensive, and more expensive. So the juice really has to be worth the squeeze to go after a trust at that level, right? Let's go to the next one. All right, so why shouldn't you choose a trust? Expense. They're not the cheapest thing to put together. Let me take that back. You can put together a trust and it can be cheap, but then what are the benefits? And we're going to get to that. So let's keep going. Complexity to manage, maintain, and then dissolve. Once you put together a trust, you have to kind of jump through hoops in order to undo it, right? So I don't suggest people putting together trusts willy-nilly. They have one or two pieces of property and they want to put together a trust. That's probably not the best use of your time and money, right? Now, right about now, someone's thinking to themselves, well, wait a minute, should I put together a trust? I'm gonna give you my opinion on when that is. Every lawyer has a different opinion on if you should have a trust and when you should put together a trust. Now, when you remember, us lawyers are also self-interested. So if you hear a lawyer that says, oh, man, you just have one house, yeah, go ahead and put that in trust. That's because he wants to make a sale. The real purpose of putting together a trust, in my opinion, I could be wrong, is for folks who hit that, 10 million and up net worth, right? And the reason why I say 10 million and up net worth is because that's when it makes that's when it makes the expense, the complexity, that's when it's worth it, right? And we'll get more to why that is, but I don't have a trust. Take that back, I actually do have a trust, but it's for a very specific and narrow purpose, right? And it's because I have full life insurance, which y'all will learn about today. So assets to insert. If you don't have the assets to insert into a trust, again, that goes for a piece, then again, what's the purpose of putting it together? If you are wanting to have less visibility, if you don't have anything that is visible, again, what's the point of that trust, right? So again, I brought up earlier about all the folks that I've seen on YouTube and Instagram talking about trust this and trust that. 99% of it is bogus. I am an attorney who would love to be hired by all of you. And here I am telling you that there are certain things that I will turn away your business because I just think it's a waste of time and money. And if there's one thing you can trust, is an attorney who's turning away your dollars. I thought that was funny. The thing that's very, very underrated is it's very hard to borrow money. People who want to put together a trust for real estate purposes and do X, Y, and Z, well, it's very hard because the banks are going to want the trustees to sign on as guarantors, and then a lot of the trust information is going to end up in the loan documents, such as the trust and things of that nature, and that's just going to ruin what the point of the trust is altogether. So it's very hard because banks, what do they want? They want as many people as possible on to go after the money. If I were going to buy a house today and I wanted debt from Wells Fargo, if every last one of you said, hey, I'm signing as a co-signer, Wells Fargo would happily sign you all up, right? So if you're interested, let me know. But the point of the matter is borrowing is very hard when you have a trust. Let's go to the next one. All right, so there's a million, I can make up trust. Make up a trust and the use of a trust. This is just a small sampling of them. And what makes them different is just the guts of the document, right? It's the words that you put in it. It's like a contract. I can make a contract for buying a car, selling a car, leasing something, a master services contract. You can make contracts in all different shapes and flavors, and it's based off of the words that you put in it. Trusts are the same way. You can have all different sorts of trusts, and the only difference is the words that you're putting inside, right? So don't get bogged down with a particular name. What you're worried about is what the purpose of that trust is, right? Let's go to the next one. So what makes a trust a trust? The first thing is you have to have a settlor or a grantor who's putting something into the trust, right? So if I am creating a trust for my children and my children's children, I can put some property, some money, I can put my business in it, and all of that is meeting the settlor or grantor creating the trust. The stuff that I'm putting in is called corpus. It's the core. That's not where corpus comes from, but I like to think of it like that. That's the core of the trust. You've You've got all this stuff that you passed in your lifetime, and you decided to put it into this trust that you no longer own it. The trust owns it. Now it's doing whatever it does and hopefully making more money. And you're saying, hey, whoever is the trustee, right? The person who is going to manage it, it can be an entity, it can be an individual, it can be multiple individuals, right? They have to follow the rules that you, the grantor, set up and administer it in kind, right? There's a great amount of flexibility, right? How much flexibility? Well, you can dictate that if your grandson, one specific grandson, doesn't marry a Jewish woman from Idaho, right? Well, then he's not going to, get this $500,000 payout. If someone doesn't go to undergrad, then their master's, or then their terminal degrees, married or not married, kids, first kid, second kid, third kid, right? Also, you can make it as detailed as you want about what happens, when it happens, why it happens, how much, how little, so on and so forth, medical expenses, right? And for the very, very, very rich in our society, they do actually get very detailed. As you might imagine, the more detailed you get, the more the cost of the trust goes up, right? Again, this speaks to when is the good reason to have a trust? When you've got the dough that makes it worth it, right? Otherwise, if you're like me and you've got 72 cents in your bank account, well, then it doesn't make good sense. Y'all are tough crowd. So then last, you've got the beneficiaries, right? Now you can have all sorts of beneficiaries. You can have the straight up beneficiaries, contingent beneficiaries. You could have second, third tier beneficiaries, so on and so forth. Easiest example is that it could be for the benefit of your kids, and then benefit of your grandkids, and then benefit of your great grandkids. And actually, now that we Texas not too long ago passed a law where the rule of perpetuities does not matter anymore, which is legal mumbo jumbo to mean that you can create a trust that goes on in perpetuity forever, right? So it used to be there's some sort of arcane math that even I couldn't figure out. There's a span of time that a trust could last, and then you would have to have rules in that trust that then create another trust. We don't have to do that. You can create a trust today and it just goes on in perpetuity forever for all of your descendants. And you can kind of delineate how we figure out who or what is your descendant, adoption, no adoption, step kids, all that sort of thing. Figure all that out, right? So now things are a lot more simple. But beneficiary of people who benefit from it. Now, what you want to be aware of is you don't want to be a settler, the trustee, and the beneficiary, and the only one. Because if you are, then the IRS says, yeah, I see what you're trying to do here, and they ignore the trust altogether, right? So that, in a nutshell, is what makes a trust. Let's go to the next. Oh, that's the last one. All right. So now let's bring this all together for a moment before we talk about better wealth, right? So what I'm giving y'all is a very, very simple framework of exactly what a trust is. And now let's talk about what a trust is not. A trust does not have any sort of bearing on your legal status as an American citizen. That's the first thing. I brought it up earlier. I just really wanted to drive that home, right? The second thing is you still have to pay taxes. There's nothing special about it. If anything, trusts are actually taxed at a higher rate. Now, are there things that a CPA would know that I would not know that can be utilized? Yes, there are, but you will be paying taxes. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, yes, you get to escape probate when you utilize a trust. But let's talk for a moment about the difference between irrevocable and revocable trusts, right? Revocable trusts are things that you create and then you can dismiss fairly easily, right? And the best use of those is you set it up, you put things inside of it. If you need to take things out or do away with it, you can. But what's great is it turns irrevocable upon your passing. A lot of people then say, well, wait a minute, I don't feel will. Create a revocable trust. I put everything inside of that revocable trust. And then voila, not so much. The reason being is because I'll just use a real simple example I used earlier today. If you're driving down the road and an 18-wheeler hits you and you have an untimely passing away, your family is now going to probably get a wrongful death suit and get some sort of fat paycheck. That is part of your estate. That's not going to be in your trust. So while the trust stuff is over there, you always need the will, because who knows what's going to happen from the point of time in which you put the stuff that you got into the trust to the point when you, pass away, right? So you always need a will. But a revocable trust is great for in addition to a will. So you want to take your stuff or some stuff and put it inside a revocable trust, that's perfectly fine. When and why would you use an irrevocable trust? In general, there's only two reasons that I can think of, right? One is you're so wealthy that you're going to take a piece of your net worth, especially a piece of your net worth that you know you're not going to touch for the rest of your life, and you're going to put it in this irrevocable trust and set it up the way that you want. And yes, you can always utilize it as a guarantor, or you can utilize it in certain specific ways, but you want it off of your estate, off of your balance sheet as income, right? That's the first reason. The second reason I would think that you want an irrevocable trust is if you're getting whole life insurance, which you could do that with irrevocable as well, but specifically if you're in the realm of real estate, if you like real estate, you do a lot of real estate, well, then you might want to set up an irrevocable trust. And when you get whole life, that whole life is the beneficiary to it is that irrevocable trust. For many different reasons. You're shielded from bankruptcy, you can do what they call, some people call infinite banking, that sort of thing. That's another very good reason why you want to have irrevocable trust. Outside of that, I have a revocable trust, but I do not have an irrevocable trust. One day when I have a bunch of money, I will, but right now, I'm not there yet. So before we turn this over to what's his name with Better Wealth? Jerome. Before we turn it over to Jerome, I wanted to field a few questions. I'm sure we have many on trusts.
You are the beneficiary.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
Right, so the question is for us to know if the trust is secret, how would they know if you are the settlor, the trustee, and the beneficiary? Well, everything's a secret until so the IRS is not the quickest out there, but they will always catch up. They will always get to it. So I'll give you an example. You create this document, you have to have an EIN, right? Let's assume for a moment that you don't have an EIN. You're opening yourself to a whole different world of problems. But here's what they know. You want to do stuff with this trust. So here you are across all three of those things that you should not be. And now you put something in the name of that trust. That's where it begins, especially if it's real estate. It might take them a few years, it might take them a decade, but eventually they'll say, wait a minute, this ABC trust owns this piece of land. They don't have an EIN? Who owns this? What's going on here? That's when they start sending letters, right? And even if you just ignore them, they're just going to take it at the end of the day, right? It's the same thing with brokerage accounts. It's the same thing with vehicles. It's the same thing with bank accounts. It doesn't matter what it is. The point of the trust is to put stuff in the name of that trust. And once you start putting stuff into the name of that trust, and then the state revenue services and then the IRS starts, saying, hey, what's going on here, right? That's where it comes back to bite. They'll eventually find out, and if they don't find out, we just take it. No problem.
Does that include the anonymity if, like, you establish organization through like Wyoming or Delaware with the protections that they have?
Yeah, so Wyoming, Delaware, Nevada, North and South Dakota, they're all barking for their privacy and whatnot, but their privacy isn't like ironclad. What's happening is that I can go on Texas SOS right now and see a fair amount of information pretty easily. These states that I've mentioned, they don't have that function. However, you can still go to their SOS and request information and still see the same stuff. So it's harder, and there's more hoops to jump through to get the same basic information that other states just log on and find out pretty easily. Yes.
Would it be better to establish a will/estate plan before looking into getting, like, putting assets in the trust?
Probably at the exact same time. If you do one before the other, it doesn't hurt it, but generally speaking, you kind of want to strategize at the same time, right? It's not an either or sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
What is the time frame on a trust if somebody passes away? And the beneficiaries in the trust, are they supposed to get a benefit from the individual? The success of the trust? They read the one.
So the question was, the timeline for beneficiaries to be notified, upon, the individual who made it passing away. So, that's not quite how they work, right? So that's something that, is, something from the movies, right? Everyone sits down and they listen to the attorney talk about this, that, and the next, right? That does happen, but that's not how it's supposed to happen. The way that a trust works is when you create it stood up from that moment. It's active at that moment, right? Whereas a will is just a piece of paper until you pass away. That's when it becomes effective, right? But a trust, I can create a trust today and I can put something into it, and it's effective from that moment. That trustee has those powers, has to follow those rules and manage that corpus and do whatever it is they're supposed to do for the beneficiaries from that moment while they're still alive, right? So trusts are immediate. Yeah, question, sir?
How hard is it to say like if getting out of the trust? Is it like staying period or you have to lease? Unless we have like then for us, there are limits. Here, now
$10 million into this trust. You put 10 properties, and these properties are making collectively $1 million a year, right? So now you've got 10 million cash plus you've got $1 million a year. That $1 million a year that's being made is income. You gotta pay your state tax. In Texas, it's 0, but you gotta pay your state tax. You gotta pay your income tax, your federal income tax, right? Now, what I'm talking about on the state tax side is you as an individual, each of you have a lifetime amount that you can give away to me, and not have to pay the estate tax, right? And that estate tax over that 12 million, somewhere about number, is 40%, which means that you can give away to your kids more than likely, $12 million, not have to pay any sort of estate tax. And then that $13 million, well, now that kid will have to pay 40% on that 13, 14 and above, right? So that's the difference between the estate tax and tax on income made inside of the trust. And by the way, real interesting thing, they have gun trusts. Create a trust that's specifically for guns, and whoever's a beneficiary of that trust has the right to utilize said weaponry that's inside of the trust.
They got to. Yeah. Don't get inside.
Correct. There's a workaround for you to be able to get certain class of weapons or anything items. Yeah. Okay. Another question?
Yeah. Let's say that, let's say, part of it. I live in hotels and I have hotels for my generations, it's a purpose to involve to it. And I want to trust the details, the care of the hotel, so if someone decides to the thing, they done with the trust. Those details, like they should contain an insurance. It's an attorney, are they looking at that, are they making sure that happens? Or do I have to have a trustee, and what happens and
In this scenario, are you the 100% owner of the hotel? Okay. So off the top of my head, what I would say is that you would have a an LLC or a corporation that owns the hotel, right? Now you have equity. That equity is owned by someone. Right now, it's owned by you. You're the sole owner. What you would do is you would have a trust, and you would that equity, you would give it up and you give it to that trust. So now the trust is the owner of the equity, right? Essentially owns the LLC. Now, this is what's great about companies. The ownership and management, they don't have to be one and the same. And presumably they would. So you would have management, your whomever, whether it's a manager of the LLC or whether it's the CEO of the corporation, right? And they would be the ones who are managing it. Now, when it comes to shareholder decisions, the trustee or trustees, because you can have more than one, of the trust would be the ones making decisions that then affect who's the manager and whatever's happening over on this side. You probably don't want the trustees of the trust being the manager of the business. It's not that they can't be, and sometimes they are, but separation is usually a good thing in these types of scenarios. No problem.
Is it a challenge to add a piece of real estate property if you still are paying a mortgage? That add to the service?
The short answer is no. So the question was, is it a challenge to move a property that has a mortgage from an individual to a trust, right? And to illustrate this, I'm gonna, tell you my favorite thing about how to think about property, right? So a mortgage, everyone knows what a mortgage is, but how does a mortgage actually work, right? You've got three main things. You've got your promissory note, which is your promise to pay. You've got your deed, which says who owns the property, and then you've got your deed of trust. So how do these things work together? Your promissory note is like the Wells Fargo. Hey, Wells Fargo, you gave me $300,000 to buy this house. I promise to pay you back with interest over 30 years, right? So that's the promissory note. Now, the deed is what says that it's yours. What's your name? Chris. Chris. This house, 123 Main Street, belongs to Chris. No last name, right? So it's his house. And he promises to pay Wells Fargo $300,000 plus interest over the next 30 years. That deed of trust is the thing that says, hey, Wells Fargo, we are now secured with this property. If you do not pay, you promise to pay. If you do not pay, this deed of trust says that I can take the property, right? So those three things combined, it's the mortgage. Now, the reason why I walked y'all through that is because the state of Texas does not care about what we got going on with Wells Fargo. All they care about is this deed. This deed says it's Chris's house. They don't care about the promissory note. They don't care about the deed of trust. They just care about this is Chris's house. Now, yes, it's secured. And so you can quickly lose it if he doesn't pay Wells Fargo. Why does this matter to y'all and what we're talking about today? It matters because when you own a property and it has a mortgage on it and you say that you want to transfer it, there's usually a clause inside of the promise to pay that says, hey, if you transfer this, paying off this note, we can accelerate the debt, right? I've never seen a mortgage that did not say that. However, the truth of the matter is I've never seen an instance in which the bank actually does accelerate. Why? Because they really don't care. If you're paying and you're paying on time, you can transfer it to whomever. They just want their money. They're in the business of getting their principal and their interest. So to your question, yes, you can transfer it. No, it's not super hard, but you would be running afoul of something that really wouldn't matter at the end of the day unless you didn't pay. I think I have time for 4 more minutes or, okay. All right, let me just take this last one right here. Sorry, Jerome.
Piece of property, you do it, from where it's at into the front.
So, the secret here is that there's nothing that a lawyer can do that y'all can't do for yourselves. Not a thing, right? Now, I don't necessarily suggest that. There's a guy I know, his name is Jeff Katzenbach. He likes to say, you can also remove your own appendix. It doesn't mean that it's a good idea, right? So, what it is essentially a deed transfer. You put together a deed which has all the correct language and, you get it signed and notarized, and then you go down to the courthouse and you file it into the property records. It's simple to me, but there's specific language, especially on if you're dealing with a trust, when it comes to signature blocks and how you label out the individual or individuals who are transferring the property to the trust and how you label out the trust. There's detail that matters. So yes, you can do it yourself. It's not that hard to me, but I've seen things get lumped up before, and then it turns into a whole situation that's great for a lawyer's pocket. So it's probably cheaper to just go with the lawyer on the front end. All right, so we'll have more time for questions after Jerome, but I'm gonna pick it over to you.
Hey, everybody. Hold on one second. I'm gonna. Okay, I think we should be good now. Only thing is, Tim, if you can let me know if somebody has a question or anything like that. I have my audio, so I can't hear what's going on in the room anymore, so it doesn't loop back and forth. But hi, everyone. My name is Jeremy. I know I was introduced as Jerome. There's no O, but there is an E at the end. My mom has doomed me for the rest of my life. I'd like to thank Titus Consulting Firm for having myself and Better Wealth here this evening. We're going to be talking about life insurance, one of the sexiest topics known to mankind. And first off, I just want to give Titus a quick compliment. I love your haircut, man. It really means a lot to me. It just speaks to me for some reason. I don't know why. But that being said, Better Wealth is a life insurance firm. We work in all 50 states and we're 100% virtual. I'm literally in the middle of nowhere, Idaho, right now. I love being able to have the flexibility that we have because of the internet to do these types of things. And what I'm going to do is introduce myself. I'm going to introduce Better Wealth, and then I'm going to talk through life insurance and some of the ways that we help use this tool to optimize, maximize, and hopefully increase the options and opportunities that you can bring by implementing this particular tool. So I'm going to go through a little bit of information, and then there'll be some time for questions at the end. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce to you my family. Four lovely kids and now 2 grandkids. There's actually one missing from this. And I am 42 this month. So I'm trying to slam about 5 lifetimes into 42 years and been pretty successful thus far. I spent quite a bit of time on active duty in the Marine Corps and then finished my 20 years in the Army National Guard. And for the past 7, have been working full-time in various parts of the financial industry, everything from mortgages to real estate to life insurance, disability income insurance, and a whole smattering of other things as well. And so with that, our company is called Better Wealth. We believe that there's a better way to do things, and our mindset is slightly different than some of the other things that maybe you've heard. And what we're going to seek to do here this evening is we're going to talk about what it is that we do. We guide people in crafting life insurance for the purposes of establishing a lifetime growth account. Okay, think of it like a savings account on steroids. 2, creating a private line of credit. I'm going to get more into this later, and this is what a lot of people are very interested about and don't really know how to use it. We're going to teach you about that. We also help unlock future cash flow opportunities with various assets that you have. We reduce tax liability. We also recover the cost of life insurance over the course of time. One of the things that folks get frustrated about is that, hey, I put all this money into this thing, and what do I have to show for it at the end of the time? I'm going to show you how we can recover some of those costs. And then increasing estate value for family and legacy planning, and then increasing protections from creditors and predators. This is the core of what it is that we do. Let me take a step back real quick. When I was in the Marine Corps, one of my jobs was to be a resistance instructor. So I taught people how to behave appropriately if they were caught behind enemy lines and they had to stand in front of the man and give account for that. And one of the things that we did was we did like a hostage takedown. And inevitably, what we would do is we would show the class what it was like to not know what to say when somebody has a gun pointed at your head. And what I want to do is kind of simulate that. The whole point of this exercise, though, is to prepare our minds for learning. This exercise that I want to do is all about thinking laterally. And I'm going to let that hang in the air while I ask this question of you. Or I give you this scenario. So you are driving in a car in the middle of a thunderstorm, and you happen upon 3 people on the side of the road. One of them is a frail old woman who looks on the verge of collapse. Another is a friend who once saved your life, and the other is the romantic interest of your dreams. And this is the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to meet him or her. You have only one other seat in the car. What do? And because our audio is what it is, I'm not going to take answers from the crowd. But who do you pick on? The answer is very simple. The old woman, of course. Then give the car keys to the friend and stay behind with a romantic interest to wait for the bus. Guys, a lot of times we get locked into a particular paradigm where we think that a thing has to do a thing that we think it does because nobody's ever told us that it does anything different. And what I want to pose to you tonight is there are a lot of things that maybe you've been told about life insurance. And what I would like to do is peel back those paradigms so that the theory or group of ideas you have about something and how that works might start to shift and might start to change. Some of the folks that give us our paradigms look a lot like this lovely gentleman, whom I really appreciate. He has helped probably millions of people get control of overspending. And while I don't agree with everything that he does, for 30 years, he's consistently had the same paradigm. He said cash is king and debt is dumb. And he said buy term and invest the difference. While I don't agree with either one of those statements, my point is that that is a paradigm. And we fall into these paradigms without really exploring a lot of times. What's the math? What does the data tell us? Why do some people call life insurance the Swiss Army knife of the financial world? Because it does a lot of things really, really well. MacGyver would be proud, let's put it that way, of this particular financial tool. Here at Better Wealth, we refer to overfunded whole life insurance as the and asset, because your money, when set up and used correctly, doesn't just do one thing, it does a minimum of 3, okay? And if that math doesn't work for you, then we're probably talking to the wrong crowd. Because when I can turn 1 into 3, I instantly have an overwhelming value, and I want to explore that a little bit more. You might also ask yourself, who in the world uses this type of stuff? Who uses this overfunded life and whole life insurance type of stuff? Well, regardless of what you feel about these guys, they do. Regardless of what you feel about these guys, they have billions and billions of dollars in whole life insurance because, as you might have guessed, banks can count whole life insurance as tier 1 capital and lend out more money. When a bank is able to lend out more money, what do they make? More money. In addition to that, a lot of corporations use life insurance in various ways, everything from compensation and executive bonus plans to securing the liquidity of the company in certain instances. The other thing that happens, remember how I said you can create a private line of credit? Well, this is Walt. Walt started Walt Disney with a policy loan from a properly structured life insurance policy. Another guy that did the same thing is Ray Kroc. You ever watch the movie The Founder? Watch it again. It's a great movie. Some people don't agree with how he did what he did, but it was absolutely genius. And he started McDonald's in its current, well, not current, but at that point, franchise format with a policy loan from life insurance. In addition to that, what we are seeing as more and more research comes out where we've been in 2 to 3 about 2 to 2.5 generations of the paradigm of buy term and invest the difference. We have a lot of people with a lot of assets, but assets don't really spend well in a retirement period. So you have guys like Dr. Wade Pfau who are taking a very academic approach and combining things like annuities and whole life insurance into people's portfolios, and they're actually able to create a lot more legacy and a lot more cash flow in a retirement period. Even guys like America's IRA expert Ed Slott are talking about the importance of things like life insurance, permanent life insurance as part of your overall financial portfolio. And I say this because this is not just some incredibly attractive bald guy in the middle of nowhere, Idaho, talking to you about this. There are other people saying, hey, life insurance, when set up and used correctly as part of an overall strategy, has multiple benefits. And so this leaves us to this idea that whole life insurance, when set up and used correctly, it really is a multi-dimensional asset. It's the most thing that's kind of like a human, because none of us are linear. You don't always get the same result with a human. At least that's the case with my family. But when life insurance is set up and used properly, it becomes an asset that leverages your dollar better than any other paper asset. So what I want to do now is break down life insurance down to its bare bones, and I want to talk you through, this is what it is. I remember the first time I got a lesson on life insurance, I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. I didn't know too much about that. At 30,000 foot view, there's 2 types of life insurance. There's term life insurance and there's permanent life insurance. Okay, we're going to focus more on whole life insurance, but permanent life insurance is broken down into universal life and whole life. I'll give that to you. We focus on whole life because we think it has stood the test of time, a couple hundred years, and offers the most benefits, guarantees, and protections. And that's what we want to offer to our clients. Whenever you sit down with a life insurance salesman, right here, Many times what they're saying is, what sort of death benefit do you need? The focus is on the death benefit, and that is exactly what life insurance is for. You pay a certain amount of money, and the life insurance company then provides a death benefit should you die, and the dictates of the contract are still in place. What's pretty cool is that whole life insurance is actually part of U.S. contract law, so it has even a little bit more teeth than other things out there. But most life insurance companies, whether they're talking about term life or universal life, what they're going to do is they're going to try to get the maximum amount of death benefit, okay, for the lowest amount of premium. This is very, very common, and even the industry is set up to precipitate this most amount of life insurance for the least amount of cost. Nothing wrong with that. That's just how it's normally set up. Okay, term life insurance by definition reads like this. A term life insurance policy is the simplest, purest form of life insurance. You pay a premium for a period of time, typically between 10 and 30 years. If you die during that time, a cash benefit is paid to your family. Now, what's cool is term life insurance can provide you the most amount of death benefit for the least amount of cost. A couple things about the industry. Less than 2% of term life insurance contracts pay out. Okay? Kind of crazy. Whole life insurance, on the other hand, is a type of permanent life insurance that pays out regardless of when you die and includes cash value or a living benefit. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. We'll get into it in just a second. When the policy has built enough cash value, you can withdraw or you can borrow against those funds. Remember how I said establish a private line of credit? While you're still alive. Unlike the other types of permanent coverage, the cash value in the whole life policy is guaranteed to grow. So there's a contractual obligation in whole life insurance for it to continue to grow. Think of it this way. Renting life insurance versus buying life insurance. Now, what's cool is when you rent something, at the end of it, it's done, right? It's a decent value, but you don't have anything left over. When you buy a home, in this case, or you buy whole life insurance, there's an equity stake, and that's that cash value. And you can use that equity stake throughout the course of your life, which makes it a true paper asset. I put a couple illustrations on here just to give you guys an idea. We use convertible term life insurance, and we use it quite a bit because we can convert it into whole life insurance later on without going back through a health underwriting. It's remarkably inexpensive. In all actuality. And so I put a couple illustrations on here just so that you can see a gentleman, Mr. Example, at 35 years of age, 45 years of age, and 55 years of age, or I think this is what, it's a little small on my screen, about $1 million of death benefit. So let's jump into whole life insurance. Typical whole life insurance is going to be constructed with all base, right? There's no other components to the policies. It's just going to be whole life insurance. You'll have very little cash value early on for sure. And there's not a lot of flexibility with how much you can contribute from time to time. And it takes 10 plus years. We usually find it's about 12 to break even. Break even means that the amount of money that I've placed in the contract is now less than what I have access to. We optimize this, okay? This is what a typical whole life policy looks like. I pointed out a couple things. There's guarantees on it, which are good, and then there's non-guarantees. You'll see here that for the first few years, the cash value column has exactly bubkiss in it. There's nothing. And down here, you'll see that when the cash value becomes greater than the cumulative contribution, that's when it breaks even. It takes a long time for this to happen. So what do? We specially design a policy using paid-up additions riders, PUAs, term riders, and a lot of early cash value for more liquidity, more flexibility, and a better performance long-term on both death benefit as well as cash value. This is one that you can take a picture of and we can diagnose later, but this is the same policy, just different design. So we come in here and we take the same product, but what we do is we add certain pieces to it. Okay, those pieces allow us to have an early liquidity, meaning lots of cash value. That's that private line of credit that we can leverage against and go do asset-based activities. Okay, like real estate, like business, like investments of whatever kind you prefer. Okay, so same company, different strategy as far as how to get it done. One thing that probably won't surprise you is the typical design pays the agent, in this case, about $50,000. The design on the other side pays the agent probably about $8,500. So there's a big discrepancy and there's a lot of loss of commission whenever you design something this way, but I think you can see why it's way more advantageous for the client. In this particular example, what I wanted to real quickly show here is that the break even, right, the time in which there's more money in cash value, when we structure this correctly, usually happens between years 5 and 7, depending on age and sex. So we're compressing the time by over half that you have access to all of the dollars that you've put in your policy. Remember how I said we could recapture life insurance? Well, when I have access to more money that I've paid for something, how much does that thing cost me? No dollars. Now, if you really want to get technical, we can talk about the time value of money, but remember, I could borrow against the cash value for that whole first 6-year period. And if my investments reduce the gap or that lost opportunity cost, this is one of the only tools that you can do this with, ladies and gentlemen. It's really, really exciting. So our thesis is if you understand the power of the and asset or overfunded whole life insurance, you will want this at the foundation of your life and, or at the very least, part of your portfolio. Okay, I'm going to give you a few reasons here before Tim starts hounding me about time as to why this is really valuable, which you just heard. Okay, how many people love the idea of tax-free? I do, right? Your hand should all go up. So tax-free lifetime growth. Think about some of your traditional accounts, a 401k, a Roth IRA. About the time that you have a bunch of money in those, what do you go to do with them? Withdraw it. You kill the goose that's laying the golden egg. Well, literally in the tax code, it says when you set up and used properly, your money grows tax-free, can be used tax-free, and will also get passed on tax-free. So when we set this up correctly, you have not only $1 doing 3 things, you have the IRS, which by the way, the IRS spells theirs, if you were wondering. Literally, their documents state that when you set this up properly, it can grow tax-free, be used tax-free, and pass on tax-free. It's incredible to me. This is just a quick example of when you look at a policy, it has lifetime compounding growth. The red here represents that in those earlier years of a policy before it capitalizes or breaks even, you have a negative rate of return because it doesn't have access to all my money. But you can see here in this example, I think it's year 6, it turns green. And this is the internal rate of return on cash value. And a lot of you might be going, well, Jeremy, the indicative return of 4.3%, I'm not very excited about that. This is not an investment, ladies and gentlemen. It is a savings tool that gives $1 3 jobs, and it has tax advantages. There's a great book out there, and this is a write-downer, as I like to call it. There's a gentleman by the name of Brian S. Bloom, and he has a book called The Capital Equivalent Value of Life Insurance. And that whole book is all about what type of account would I have to have, and what would that type of account have to earn from a rate of return perspective to be the equivalent of what life insurance does. Great book, The Capital Equivalent Value of Life Insurance, if you're interested. And again, this is just a picture. All accounts are just a construct of 3 things: time, volume of money, and interest rate. And about the age of 65, because compounding interest is a hockey stick, is when these things really start to kick off. But what do? At about 65, 70, we start killing the goose that's laying the golden egg. What if we could allow lifetime growth to happen in an account? Well, whole life insurance is that vehicle. Control. When life insurance is used properly, you can access money through a collateralized loan while your money continues to grow. I'd like to introduce you to a couple of folks, Sally the Saver and Barry the Borrower. This is a bit of a paradigm shift for some of you, okay? If Sally saves up money, okay, over the course of time, boom, 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 you can see the stair steps, and then buys something, where does she end up? Right back at 0. Barry the Borrower, on the other hand, buys something because he likes debt, and then he pays it back over the course of time. Where does he end up? Back at 0. Now, you may say, Jeremy, what about inflation? Jeremy, what about interest? What about? At the end of the day, wouldn't it be true that both of these people end up back at 0? Well, What if we had an account that grew for our lifetime that we could borrow against, not from, that continued to grow while we use that money in more than one spot? Okay, so I can have money growing at, let's say, 4.5%, but also, now there's a control cost, don't get me wrong, that's called interest. But what if I had an opportunity to earn 15 or 20% in a business opportunity on the outside of that policy? So now I've got life insurance, I've got a private line of credit, I've got lifetime compounding growth, and I have an asset that I've purchased, and I have $2 doing two things, or I have $1 doing two things for me. Future cash flow planning. Remember when I was talking about Dr. Wade Pfau and Ed Slott? When the market is up, right, typically that's when we want to take from things. But if you go to retire, like let's say April of 2020, and the market all of a sudden drops into the toilet, do you want to take from your accounts while they've already been kicked? No. Life insurance can be used as what's called a market volatility buffer. And there's a number of strategies that we can do here. I'm just going to use this as an example. So no matter whether you're on the climb up the mountain and you're accumulating, or whether you're on the other side of the mountain and you're distributing, life insurance has a play from protection and growth, also to distribution and planning, unlocking other opportunities and assets that you didn't have. So let's go back to our scenario in April of 2020 when the market all of a sudden dropped into the toilet because a little cold happened called COVID. And everybody was like, oh, okay, well, if you retire in that month and you go to take a distribution from your 401k, you have disrupted years of growth, Well, what if I could borrow against my life insurance cash value for the next 3 to 6 months of income? First thing, is a loan a taxable event according to the IRS? No, not currently. So do I have to report that income on my 1040? No, I don't. So I'm saving on taxes, which is probably good. In addition to that, I'm allowing my market-based assets to recover so that I can distribute from them when the market is high. The other cool thing about life insurance policy loans is that they are guaranteed issue and they're also unstructured. Guaranteed issue means that if you're pushing a cart down the street and in dire straits, they will still give you a policy loan. You're not qualified based off of income, credit, and debt. And in addition to that, they're unstructured, meaning you get to decide how and if you pay them back. Because when you pass, the death benefit pays off that loan and any charges on it, okay? And then the remainder goes tax-free to your beneficiary. Real quick, since I said beneficiary, there's three people in a policy. You have the insured, okay, the person that the life insurance is written on. You have the owner, and then you have the beneficiary. Those three things or entities can all be different. So you could have a son who's insured. You could be the owner and payer of the policy, and your trust could be the beneficiary thereof. And I think you can see how this starts to play into legacy planning in a very cool way. Some of you have maybe heard of Ernst & Young, just another, social proof type of slide that talks about the power of future cash flow planning when instituting products like life insurance and annuities. Legacy and protection. Okay. I personally am a guy that wants as much life insurance as I possibly can because it helps to establish my estate. Buying death benefits is one of the biggest and greatest ways to perpetuate a family financial legacy because it's tax-free. And you can start this process of feeding one generation into the next, into the next, into the next by having life insurance, by life insurance, by life insurance. 2 generations from now, your family's financial outlook looks very, very different when life insurance and proper estate planning get married up. Okay, life insurance establishes your estate, supports and perpetuates it. Easy way to say what I just already said. Other great things. If you live in the state of Florida, cash value of life insurance policy being issued in Florida for a resident may not be attached by creditor of insured. So when I said creditor and creditor protections, depending on your state, Florida happens to be one of the best. There's creditor and predator protections. We meet a lot of people who have a lot of cash sitting in bank accounts, and by simply, we've got it, thanks Tim, by simply shifting it into permanent life insurance, a lot of times you increase the creditor and predator protections on those dollars. Other great things that can be added are things like chronic and chronic illness and accelerated death benefit, accelerated benefits, right? Like terminal illness or chronic illness. You can also add retirement and long-term care. There's lots and lots and lots of things that you can do. The point is that we can also bolt on more things to get this policy to perform exactly like you would like it to perform. I went ahead and put up our next step today, and I asked him to go ahead and get everybody this link. This book a call link is going to allow you guys, if you fall into one of these three categories, to jump on a call with either myself or one of our team members. And what we're going to do is we're going to spend about 20 minutes getting to know you. Our goal is to figure out what results you're really looking for in this consultation. And then with those results, where we head, go through a quick qualification to make sure that you can qualify for life insurance and to what degree, and then we get into the strategy of it in executive meetings. And this just starts everything. So if anything I've said, or if you fall into these three categories, the best way to connect with us is going to be to book a clarity call. And we'll make sure that you get this link that's up here on the screen. My request is that you put where it says, how did you hear about us? Please give Titus Law Firm everything you need to know about GBC so that we know where you guys came from and who you're working with regards to your estate plan. That's important for us to know. We also have a bunch of additional resources. We have a great YouTube channel called The And Asset. We have another one called the Better Wealth Channel, and then everything is also on a podcast as well. And if you look far enough, you might find myself as well. Guys, thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to go ahead and turn back on my feed of the room because I think we're going to take some questions.
All right, awesome. So Jeremy, can you hear us?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Oh, perfect. All right. So, guys, was this a lot of great information tonight?
Yes, it was.
So this is particularly for our community, a lot of information that has always been withheld. So this is great information, a great opportunity for you to ask questions. Because of course we talk about trust, basically work. But most importantly, we always with term policies that are given to jobs, most that are sold to us, but whole life has kind of always been that hidden secret. So I'm hoping that everyone has at least questions around it while we have the opportunity. We have Jeremy here to really kind of get more in-depth information in which trust that we talked about earlier, but as well as also too whole life. So when we kick it out to you guys, anyone have the first question to kick it off, kind of really diving more into this whole life?
Thank you. Jeremy, would you recommend getting, or does it make sense to have more than one whole life plan if you want to have something set up for your child, specifically maybe for college or later, like post high school education?
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Also, nice haircut. I recommend that we approach it from putting on your oxygen mask first. Usually what we do is we look to secure mom and dad. And a lot of times we'll use a combination of both term and whole life to make that happen. It really depends. Once mom and dad are secured, then we look at kids, and amounts really have to do a lot with, so there's guidelines. Each company, some companies, for instance, if mom and dad have a combined death benefit of $1 million, the kids can only get $750,000 of death benefit. At other companies, they can get $1 million. So we're always playing with income restrictions. We're always playing with contribution restrictions and various guidelines as far as how much death benefit does mom and dad have. So in the clarity call, that's where we can diagnose your specific situation. And see what it is that we need to do. But we have lots of clients with multiple policies. It really depends on how they come to us and what they're trying to accomplish.
Do we have any questions? All right, gentlemen in the back. Back to you.
Earlier you mentioned that only 2% of most of those policies pay out. Is that based on this premium or something that was
borrowed against the policy and it doesn't pay out after that, or is something go wrong with the policy, or is it based on premium? That was term life?
Yeah, great question. So with term life insurance, it's between 1.5 and 2% of them pay out. And what I mean by payout is when somebody buys term life insurance, only 2% of the people that buy term life insurance die while they have it. So that's what I mean by payout. Okay.
Okay, so if you're in the movie, what is the advantage of whole life insurance versus annuities? And it appears that annuities may pay out. What is your thought process?
I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that, sir. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so if you already have annuities established, what is the difference, or what is the advantage of whole life insurance versus annuities when you can borrow against your annuity? And it appears that annuities pay out a little bit faster than whole life. What is your thought process around that?
So thank you for your question. It sounds like if you already have some annuities established, what's kind of the difference between annuities and whole life? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So one thing that I heard you say, sir, is that you can borrow against an annuity. I'm not personally aware of any annuities that you can borrow against. But hey, I reserve the right to not know everything. In addition to that, an annuity is designed, technically speaking, to liquidate an estate, meaning that it takes a certain amount of money and it pays it out over a period of time. Now, you can use multi-year guaranteed annuities, fixed indexed annuities to grow money with guarantees and things like that. And I'm a huge proponent of that. I think where life insurance comes in and it's a little bit different is that life insurance, it pays a tax-free death benefit. Annuities are either qualified or non-qualified. So the tax treatment of an annuity depends on how the money got in there. Is it pre-tax money or is it post-tax money? And I pay taxes on the gains. So life insurance pays out when the person dies, tax-free. The other thing with life insurance is that you can get it very young and contribute to it for your whole life. So it allows you to have a private life of credit before you would ever be able to purchase an annuity, provided that you can borrow against it. And I don't know that to be the case. So both tools are only sold by life insurance companies. So their growth is based in actuarial data. And I agree with both tools. Typically what we see though is that whole life insurance provides more flexibility than an annuity because once I put money in an annuity, it's locked away. Now there are 10% withdrawal privileges for a lot of FIAs and MIGAs. But in general, I would say that you're looking at a lot more flexibility and while an annuity may get $1 2 jobs, whole life gives it 3. I hope that answers your question.
Quick question. Clarify, so you would have told me that with whole life insurance, I can purchase a policy on myself, my spouse, my children, pay into it, and then I can borrow against it, take out cash value, and I can invest in real estate. So the actual balance is still increasing, meaning gaining some interest, 4.5%, something like that, while I borrow against it, pay it back on my own terms, put it over somewhere in real estate or a business venture, possibly make more money, and not pay taxes on what I borrow in the meanwhile because it's debt, and then pay it back when I feel like it. And I get a death benefit when I pass away, that then I could pay towards a trust. And then I can tell that trust that it's just to buy more life insurance on other family members. Is that right? I can do that?
Yeah, it's either witchcraft or illegal. One of the two.
Another question.
Yeah, that's well put.
life insurance, you usually can't start borrowing against you in the GDR. Or
I'm so sorry.
you can't hear me? Okay, can you hear
Now
me?
I can. Yeah, the mics, they gotta be up closer.
Okay, so
Thank you.
when you borrow against your whole life insurance, I had whole life insurance, with, driving. I don't know where you're driving, but anyway, it means that I can start borrowing against it until I have 10 years. And then I also understood that once I started borrowing from it, then I would have to pay back. So like say I invest in real estate or have a business and I get that, I would need to pay it back within that year for it not to have any penalty.
Okay, so
You're
Lot-
saying that I have to pay it back whenever.
that's right. So, a couple of things. Edison told me, he's like, hey, you have 20 minutes. And I'm like, well, I have 90 minutes worth of stuff. So I smashed as much as I could into 20 minutes. There's a whole section that we talk about choosing the right company. Not to disparage Thrivent, but I wouldn't write a whole life policy with them because they're not the type of company that functions the way that we want. Okay, so companies that we work with are going to be like Penn Mutual, Mass Mutual, Guardian, Lafayette Life Insurance Company, One America. We have a couple of other relationships, but those are kind of the big five that we go after. And the reason for that is because their format allows people to immediately leverage money within the first 30 days of starting their policy, and it's up to you how you pay it back. Okay, so it's very, very flexible. And one of the big things that we try to do is we work with people on the strategy, because just arbitrarily taking for things is probably not the greatest thing. We want to there's two rules that we talk about: taking a policy loan or an asset-based activity. Now, an asset-based activity could very simply be an investment. It could be real estate, it could be business, or it could be a combination thereof, or some manner of control mechanism, meaning like the market volatility buffer strategy that I was telling you about. Maybe in a retirement period, you borrow against your policy so that other assets can be unlocked and still grow during a down market. That would be called control. What we're not proponents of is borrowing against your life insurance policy for consumable items. Okay, consumable items are a lot like a credit card to pay for groceries and then not paying off your credit card. It's not doing anything for you. That is a negative use of debt. When Edison was talking, it reminded me of a family that I work with. They have 8 children, and so there's 10 total people in this family. And combined, when I met them, they had $1 million of cash value in all of their different life insurance policies. And using that $1 million combined as a family, they generate about $200,000 of continued cash flow as a result of cycling money through those policies on an annual basis. So this is a really powerful strategy when done well. And what we find is that the people who manage their finances well and add this to it, it's even better. If you're having trouble managing your finances prior to, you add a layer of complexity, sometimes can be negative. So good financial management is key to all of this. Sorry, I went a little bit beyond there.
Another question? Here we go.
Just to add on a little bit, it's like, do you need a certain amount before you can start borrowing against the whole lot?
Can you say that one more time, sir? I'm sorry.
Do you need to build up a certain amount of money before you can start to build, say, you can borrow against the whole lot? 30 days.
I got you. Yeah. Do you have to have a certain amount before you can borrow against it? Is that the question?
Yeah.
The quick answer is no. So if you contribute, let's say $5,000 in the first year to your policy, the way we design it, immediately it might show that you have, let's call it $1,000 of cash value. Within that first week, you could borrow against it. the thing I would encourage you to remember is that in those first 6 to 8 years, you're not going to have access to all the money that you've placed into the policy because there's that capitalization period where we're overcoming the cost of that insurance as fast as we possibly can. Okay. But short answer, no, you can have immediate access to that money.
Thank you. We have another question.
Thank you.
All right, seeing that we don't have anyone once, twice, none. Again, I do wanna, of course, as we're talking about a segue of trust and whole life policies versus term policies. I know we kind of shortened a little bit earlier around questions around trust or states and will. Anybody have any questions regarding those matters as well, in further? There we go.
I just wanted to kind of break down the difference between a will and an estate plan for people to know the difference.
So estate plan in general is just your 360 view about what is the plan for your estate, right? So from a lawyer's point of view, that would be spouse and your kids and your property and your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, your body, your medical issues, your remains after you pass away, all of those things. From a financial perspective, they're also going to be thinking about monetarily what's supposed to happen, who it's supposed to happen with, and what do you have set up, right? So, estate planning for attorneys usually can be boiled down to a will, maybe a trust, a medical power of attorney, durable statutory power of attorney, a DNR, do not resuscitate, agent of remains. I'm missing one more thing. But these things collectively is what we would call an estate plan because it covers everything that you might need to cover, right? Now, if you're thinking about it with, life insurance and all the other things that you might need to think of, that's from the financial perspective. Also, something that we would think about is your business matters, succession planning, right? So, but a will, it's just a will, which is one component of your estate plan.
Okay, so sorry, I was a little bit late, but for the trust. They would have to do whatever stipulations that you put in place in order, like the beneficiaries, for them to be able to take advantage of the trust. Something like that. So what I'm thinking about is, like in the movies where you have the older person who's died, but they like a video, hey, you don't get this money unless, you straighten up your act and you take care of this estate and da, 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 da. And after you do these 5 steps or 2 steps within 5 months, then you get the whole shebang, right? So is that the same thing as, so say, in real life terms, I have a prodigal brother, right? And I want to leave him something, but I'm afraid that he may just mess it all up, right? And so I want to put these steps in place. Is that something that can actually happen in real life, or is that just the news?
Because I answered it. Cool. No, you're pretty basic for trusts. You can tell they didn't like about what needs to happen for efficient precedent before a lump sum payout or regular monthly payouts or payouts for certain uses. But to answer your question, like you said, yes. The more complex they are, the more complex they are. So something that requires an individual to make a determination based off of something that's objective, that can be done. Is what you stated, but that
exemption. So,
You're saying that you're putting it in her name?
correct.
Well, then she would get it at that point if it's her homestead. Right.
So she would have to do a homestead.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
No, no, I'm sorry. I'm asking a question.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, to answer your question, if it's her only property and she names it her homestead, or if it's not her only property but she names that her homestead, then yes, she would get the exemption. Oh yeah, state doesn't care about the mortgage. All they care about is the deed. Yeah. But remember, there's Medicaid and Medicare to worry about. So if you put an asset in her name, there's Medicaid, Medicare ramifications on that. Just, gonna bring that up. Now, I mean, if you're rich and Medicaid and Medicare is not a concern for your mom, well then, no worries.
In the event one of the beneficiaries of the trust do not meet the stipulations that were set, what happens to the portion that was set aside for them?
Whatever you say should happen. It might be that you don't really speak to it and it's just a part of the pot, right? A lot of these trusts, the ones that I'm thinking of at least, they're usually built to last for some period of time or last in perpetuity. So in that case, if your son Tony does not go and graduate, right? All right, if he doesn't graduate, well, then he doesn't get that $100,000 bonus and he doesn't get that $2,500 a month stipend for all of his masters or whatever it is that you said. And so it just remains in the corpus or the pot. Yeah.
Do you have a question?
I wanted to follow up on the question the young man asked in the back regarding him giving, I thought he said if he gave his mother property, could she file homestead on it if the title was in his name? Was that the question? Yes.
Okay, so if the mortgage is in his name, but the title is in her name, in your name. Oh, I thought you said the mortgage was in. Oh, so you are going to give it to her, then the title. Okay, so if the mortgage is in your name, the state of Texas doesn't care about the debt. They don't care about whose name the debt is in, right? Now the title, if the title is in your name, then no, she can't claim homestead. You can't get that exemption. If you do give her title, meaning you transfer the deed into her name, then yes, she can claim it as homestead and get the exemption, right? And that's when you need to worry about the Medicaid, Medicare stuff. However, I heard you say quit claim. Don't do a quit claim. Texas does not like quit claims. All right. Okay. All right. We clear now? We good? All right. All right. And real quick, she had said something about, the money, if, the son doesn't do something, it has to be allocated. It does not, right? The pot, like most of the time, you can create a trust that's supposed to terminate at a particular point, and you dictate how and when it terminates, right? But if it's supposed to go in perpetuity, you don't have to say, oh, if Tony didn't graduate, the money that he was supposed to get, this is what's supposed to happen, because you've created something that's supposed to, keep on making money and keep on doling out money to the various beneficiaries as time keeps going on.
Hold on one second, ma'am, because we got it streaming, so we got to hear your question. So let's say that this is her only son. He doesn't have kids. He never met the stipulations. She hasn't specified any other instructions within her. What happens to that pot?
So if you went to a lawyer who of course would not be us, who wrote it in such a way and just left it open-ended, that's a terrible lawyer. But if that were the case, then it would escheat to the state, go to the government. And we all love Texas, right? So you'd be giving your money to Texas at that point. That's a great thought, isn't it? Who wants to give all their money to Texas? Oh, you do? Okay.
No, just how do you secure you have a trust and you get it executed? Do you make copies, or how do you secure it so other people know what's going on with the trust?
So that's actually a controversial question between attorneys. So I'll tell you my opinion. My opinion is once you create that trust, you should keep the original in your home, in your personal effects, your file cabinet, your safe, whatever have you, and then put a copy in, a safety deposit box. And then I personally, this is my opinion that not all attorneys share, give a copy to the beneficiaries and the people who would be the trustees, especially after you pass. Now, I think that that's the smartest thing to do because now there's parity of information and people know what's what after you're gone, right? Other folks don't like that so much because it's like, oh, you gave so-and-so this, or, this is what you said, or what that's the stipulation you put, or what if I don't want to, and all that headache. Me, I'll just ignore the hell out of them. You'd be like, if you don't want it, you can ignore it, but here's your copy. But that's my opinion, because the reason why is because I see a lot, especially with wills, but I see a lot of so-and-so passed away, and I know they had something, but I don't know where it is. So you created this document, and now nobody knows where it is or what's going on, or it's, and now everybody's fussing and fighting, right? So that's my 2 cents. We got one right behind you first.
Just to add to that, as an advice, do not put the only copy of the document into your safety deposit box, and don't give access to anybody to it, because if you pass away, your relatives will be struggling to get access to the safety deposit box, and they will spend months trying to figure out, even if they know that your will that Titus Law Firm will create for you will be in that safety deposit box. So if you want to keep your privacy, then tell the beneficiaries and the trustees where it is and allow them access upon your demise, but not before. So you keep your privacy, but nobody knows what's going on until you don't really care because you're gone. But from my own experience, I'm not in law, but from my own experience, I've heard horror stories of, people just not thinking it through. Safety deposit box, and the bank will give them hell.
Notice that's why I said a copy in the safety deposit box.
All right, last question from me. All right. I know you spoke of north of about 10 million when you're starting to think about trust. Is there a threshold that you start to think about, just like this young lady here was talking about, a sequence of events that needed to happen before a person gets access to, whatever she's leaving them? Is there a threshold that you recommend in using trust versus a will? I just want to get a clarifying on that.
I think that you should always use a will. And I think that if you get to the point where you're using a trust, then you should still also have a will. So it's always have a will. And then when you get to a point of wanting or needing a trust, you have a trust and a will. So that's part of, part of your question. The other thing that I want to hone in on is that 10 million number that I use, that's just simply my opinion. I can't stress that enough. There's no right or wrong answer. You can have 572 to your name and a bag of Doritos and you can create a trust, right? Do not let my opinion stop you from getting a trust if you want a trust. I have a reason that I think that that's a good threshold, and it's because of the cost and the complexity and all that sort of a thing, right? I personally, as an individual, taking off my lawyer hat, I don't see the benefit of it. That does not mean that you should take my word for it. I'm telling you my thoughts, right? Everyone has their opinion. If you go to another lawyer and they say, oh yeah, everyone should have a trust, they're entitled to their opinion. But I do caution you, of course, we want to sell trusts, right? So just be wary of having 572 in a bag of Doritos and they're trying to sell you a $3,000, $5,000 trust. Oh, okay.
So real quick, I know we're pushing up on time for a lot of people. I know we have one here, this gentleman here, one there. So we're going to take 3 more and then we're kind of pushing up on time. So I'm going to start back here, ma'am.
Thank you. You've mentioned a couple of times about Medicare and Medicaid essentially getting in your business, right? If somebody has a title in their name for property and they're over 65. So just to clarify, are you saying that if something happens to that individual and they have to go into a nursing home, maybe they don't have enough money to pay for it, then they can use your property as collateral? Is that one of the hesitations of?
Okay, so, my name is Nalisha Garza. I am a paralegal with the Titus Law Firm and formerly a Medicaid specialist and appeals and at Texas Health and Human Services. So very specialized in Medicaid. So Medicaid, if you apply for nursing facility benefits, given the amount of money that the state shells out for nursing home benefits, they will run your social for every single asset that your name is on. And it comes up often, and that technology, it has been renewed and specialized a few times since I was with the state. And with properties especially, you are exempt one property. One person is exempt one property, and that has to be what you call your homestead. So if you have a homestead in a primary place of residence, but you have a piece of land that's off somewhere that somebody owned and gave it to you, if that property is more than $2,000, you are exempt from nursing facility benefits. So there are ways to look at every single asset you have and make plans for if you what we call crisis planning, if somebody is going into the nursing facility soon, or if somebody's sick and you think that they may go into a nursing facility and you want to pre-plan and prepare all of their assets to get that in place in the off chance that you may need Medicaid. And even if you don't need Medicaid in the future, it's set up in such a way where you can avoid any type of hassle with moving assets, like wills, proper estate planning with wills, ladybird deeds, that trust, that sort of thing, to make sure that your assets are prepared whether you decide to go into a nursing facility or not, and also in the event of your passing.
So, because Medicare and Medicaid, you may not
Two
have,
separate
right,
two
exactly.
separate
So
things.
if you just have Medicare
Mhm.
and you don't have Medicaid,
Mhm.
are they looking at it the same way?
No. Medicare, there are different parts of Medicare, A, B, C, all of that. So when you turn 65, or in some special cases, you are automatically qualified for Medicare Part A. Part B comes, which also has a premium associated with it. That premium changes every single year. So there are Medicaid programs that assist you with paying that premium. There are Medicaid programs that assist you with provider services. And there are also Medicaid programs that assist you with nursing facility benefits. With Medicare, that goes straight from Social Security services. So that is an entitlement program because you've put in your 40 quarters of work experience, 10 years, so to speak. You're automatically, right now anyway, you're automatically entitled to that Medicare benefit. Oh.
There you go, sir, real quick. All right, thank you. So when I start my trust through Titus Law Firm with my Better Wealth whole term life insurance and my untimely death happens, you guys aren't gonna let my relatives know? I have to have the documents somewhere and let them know. You guys won't give them a heads up?
So yes, we can. We can set all that up, and we can be your family attorney, essentially, right? I mean, that's the short answer. Yes, we can.
Last question.
I would only, it's not really a question. I would only encourage everybody to talk to the attorneys at the Titus Law Firm for one simple reason. You mentioned several times $12 million estate tax exemption on a federal level, which is exactly so. It's actually almost 13 this year. However, you didn't mention a couple times, and I would certainly remind everybody, and if they didn't know, then I would just share with that information. In exactly 2 years, excuse me, in exactly 2 years, it's going to sunset to 5 point something change index for inflation over the last 6 or 7 years that the inflation was not calculated on a 5 million. So it's going to be coming to play with some reasonably, well-off folks who are not concerned now with $13 million per person exemption. But in 2 years, who knows what's going to be in the political and economic situation in the country. So when it sunsets, it might become a play, and it has to be maybe addressed now in anticipation of the sunset.
So to changes like that, we have a tax attorney in-house. That's their wheelhouse. I know a little bit enough to be dangerous, but as you can see, I employ people smarter than I am, so that way all bases can be covered, right? Though in my experience, when it comes to the estate tax, every few years it always inches up a little bit higher. Both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, love, or I should say dislike, the estate tax. So I personally don't think it'll ever regress, but always inch higher. But yeah, is that it or more questions?
I think that's it. So for the sake of time, we got to go for the sake of time, but we are going to be here after here because we do have to have the crew breakdown real quick. But I do appreciate everybody coming out tonight. This is the last of our seminars for this year, 2023, for everybody that came in late. So we'll kick these off back starting in January of 2024 with, again, additional information that cover all of the practice areas that we cover. One of the things, though, that we are still doing webinars and as well as other smaller seminars. So if you do have a real estate firm, or you are a CPA or church gathering, whatever it is, you want us to come out, share some of this information that you guys got, we're more than happy to share. We have information where you can contact me, of course, Titus, to be able to do that. The one that we do have coming up that's very important, it's on the 21st of this month, that is going to really talk about a lot of things dealing with the employment retention credit. Anybody own a business here? Very important that you be in that. We'll be emailing it out to everyone that registered. It's a webinar, so it's not a seminar, so you easily jump on. It starts at 12:30, but we're really going to be talking about that credit. Of course, that ties into your taxes. The tax year is winding down, so of course, it's a great chance right now for you to understand where you are for us in your year of where you're at with taxes, and this is a great credit if you do qualify for it, and getting a better understanding if you are fit for it. So again, we'll be sending that out to everybody. I do appreciate everyone coming out tonight. Hopefully you took a gem or two away to be able to share, put toward personally or with a family member. And again, for all of your questions and any of the needs that you have, don't forget to contact us at Titus Law Firm. And thank you all. Have a great night. Thank you. Oh, real quick, for everyone that we didn't get a chance to sign in, if you could, on your way out, just stop by the table here. We can get your information, of course, particularly if you want to have more in-depth information regarding these things. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.